Hi, it's Lynn Pierce with Ageless Lifestyle After 50.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about work-life unbalance. There's a lot of controversy about work-life balance, if it exists, if it doesn't exist. Is it really like a unicorn? It can't possibly be attained, so why bother going after it in the first place? I've written a lot of articles about this topic in the past, so much so that I make it a subtopic on my website. But when I started looking at those articles after a conversation I had with a friend of mine, what I realized is that they all covered different aspects of what life-work balance could look like for you, but not really in the way that I wanted to discuss it. So I did an article that came out, what is today? Thursday. So it came out on Monday, and I posted it in some women's groups for women over 50, and it got a lot of reaction. And I've also gotten private messages from people about it. So I thought, why not do a Facebook Live and talk to you about it and see how this looks in your life. So the big thing is that for me, it was a very twisted path to a happy version of work-life balance that works for me. And another thing that I noticed is that millennials are now seeming to be interested in what I've been teaching for many, many years about how to create, your own life and live life on your terms. That millennials aren't looking for a 30 or 40-year job and then retiring and then having a life. That millennials, not all of them of course, but a large group of them are going the entrepreneurial route, some of them doing network marketing or other types of home-based businesses, some being digital nomads or expats in their 20s, which is something that used to be unheard of. So I started thinking about it and I thought, well, what would drive them to do something so drastically different than older generations? And it made me wonder, as parents, was it something that you did, maybe you're entrepreneurs, and they saw what a great life you had and wanted the same for themselves? Or was it possibly that as millennials, they looked at someone going off to work every day at a job that they didn't enjoy or maybe even hated, and living for Friday night and the weekend only to go back to that job they hated again the next week, and said, hey, I'm not going to live my life that way. I want something completely different for me. So they came to the conclusion that a lot of people come to in their 50s of wanting to get out of the rat race, get out of that corporate career or a regular job, and do something that really makes them happy. I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing on my phone, but it seems like the light keeps shifting lighter and darker. If that's showing up on your side, I'm sorry about that. I have no idea what's going on. Nothing's changing in the room that I'm in, so we'll see. So when I started writing this article, I thought, well, let's go step by step through my life. Let's go through the decades and see what a difference it makes. And as you might have heard me talk about before, I've been creating my life, consciously creating it, since I was a teenager. So when I left high school, I was already creating a plan for my life. I had a vision. I created a blueprint. And that's how I've always lived. So in my 20s, the personal growth books that I was reading when I was looking for work-life balance showed me that what I needed to be in balance was literally to be in balance every area. If there's 8 or 10 major areas of your life, that each one of them was supposed to make a wheel that when you graft them in a circle, that they should be a wheel rather than going like this and being scalloped. But is that reality? I mean, in my 20s, when a book told me that was what I was supposed to be doing, I thought, okay, I have to try and do this. But then I felt like I wasn't living up to my potential if there was areas in my life that I wasn't interested in. Like at the time, I wasn't interested in doing charitable work or being part of a community. I wasn't interested in a church or any kind of religious life. So those were very lopsided if I was trying to make a wheel, which meant I failed. I was never going to be in balance. And maybe I would be successful in my business, maybe I would have great hobbies and relationships, but I was never going to be in balance. And as a sales manager in my 20s, I taught that same thing to the people that worked for me. And that was a problem because what it did was it made them feel guilty. It made them feel like they weren't enough. I realize all that now because that's how I was feeling too. But I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was the right thing to do. And then in my 30s, or maybe even in my late 20s, I came to the realization that being in real estate gave me a great deal of flexibility, which is why I went into real estate in the first place, because I wanted the flexibility to travel without someone telling me I couldn't. But I realized it gave me the flexibility to also have a built-in career when I wanted to move to another area or another state. And the only price I had to pay for this flexibility was getting relicensed in each state that I moved to. But that was something I was more than happy to do. The other thing it gave me was the flexibility to work for a while, make some money, and then turn around and go and do something else, whether it was focusing on hobbies. I was big into photography back then, cooking, learning about nutrition, traveling all over the world. But the biggest thing for me, which also became almost a full-time job when I wasn't working, was personal growth. Figuring out who I am and what's important to me and how I can become a better version of myself. That I guess that's been my lifelong goal. And so I was able to take off 6 months, a year, 2 years, and not work. I would just pile up money, and then I would take time off, and then I'd go back to work, and then I'd take time off. And that was how I chose to structure my life. So in my 30s, that looked like I had found a personal work-life balance. And then in my mid-30s, I moved to Cabo San Lucas. And I was working in the resort industry. I only worked mornings, so you'd think I would have had a great work-life balance because I had the afternoon to cook, to read, to go play golf with my friends. But there was one thing stopping me from having work-life balance, and the fact that everybody that I knew, including my husband, we were all in the same business. So no matter what you were doing, whether you were at the golf course, the beach, out to dinner, whatever, all we ever talked about was work. And that was something that was starting to drive me crazy. It was really stressing me out. So I made a point of seeking out other people to do things with. And I got involved in a women's group that actually today, in a couple hours, I'm going to a meeting of this women's group that I first got involved in when it started in the early 90s. So I picked up again with that when I moved back here. But getting involved in a women's group to meet women that were outside of the resort industry. I also started doing charitable work with doctors that would fly down and do a clinic. I got involved in a spiritual discussion group that was huge for me because for the first time, I was not on a solo journey of self-improvement and discovery. I had a group of people that I could talk about all these things with. So ironically, the things that kept me from being balanced in my 20s, community and religion, or I shouldn't call it religion because that's not what it is for me, a spiritual life, those two things that I didn't want to get involved in my 20s were the very same things that in my 30s made it possible for me to achieve that personal work-life balance. So as we grow and change in our lives, things that maybe didn't work for us at one stage of our life are the things that do work best for us at another stage in our life. So that's okay too. It's the ebb and flow of everything that happens in our lives. And then in my 40s, I ended up, after the breast cancer, at, what can I ever remember if it was 42 or 43? I'm really bad with numbers. After that, I moved back to the U.S. and became an entrepreneur and an author and speaker and mentor and all these things that I did after that. And I was madly and passionately in love with everything I was learning, everything I was doing in my business, everything I was creating. But I still wanted to make sure that I was traveling 10 to 12 weeks a year. So I would work while I was traveling. So much so that I would get emails from people saying, "Are you always traveling, or do you just write sales letters for your programs and your events while you're traveling? Because every time I read a sales letter about a new product or the Women's Business Empowerment Summit, you always say, I'm in Cabo, or I'm on Maui, or I'm here or there." And it was always kind of funny to me because it's like, yeah, both. I'm always traveling because that's what I love to do, and I'm always working because that's what I love to do. So conventional wisdom would say that there's no way that someone who is working literally almost 24/7 could possibly be in balance. But I was so happy because I loved what I was doing that much. There was nothing that I wanted to do more than that. I would make a deal with my husband that he could go out and go snorkeling or go kayaking or do whatever he wanted to do in the morning if he would just let me work for a few hours. And then from lunch on, I would be on vacation. But I not only loved what I did, I was inspired to be more creative because of being on vacation. I never missed a week of my e-zine, no matter where I was. I always wrote my e-zine article every single week. So that was just how I wanted things to be, which would seem to be completely out of whack. And yet I could not have been personally happier and more fulfilled in my life. And then in my 50s, everything turned 180 degrees, and all of a sudden, here I was back living in Cabo. So things change from time to time. Sometimes they change in short intervals, long intervals. They can change on a dime. But the fact is, your version of work-life balance, especially if you really love what you do and you're living your passion and your life purpose, can be a very blurry line. And so I know for a lot of soul-based entrepreneurs, this is an issue because you feel like you should have more separation, you feel like you should have more balance in the different areas of your life. But I would say, not if you don't feel like it, because if it's making you happy, then that's what you should be doing. That is your personal version of work-life balance. And money really is not a factor unless you make it one. So that's up to you, because there have been times in my life, more than once, where I was flat broke. And there have been times that I've had more money than I know what to do with. And the fact is, the way I create my life has never changed. The only thing that would change is traveling around the world whenever I feel like it, and maybe doing things that are closer to home. But other than that, it's not affected at all by money. I look at the perfect work-life balance as being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want it to be, for as long as I want, with the option of doing something completely different anytime I feel like it. So that's the bottom line for me. And what I learned by going through this process of writing this article, when I looked at it, I thought, well, isn't that interesting that when I felt most in alignment and on purpose and really joyful, having joy, ease, and peace in my life are the three things that I live for. And I had all those at that time. That looked like from the outside that I was most out of balance. And when I thought about it, I thought, okay, I was creating tools and programs for people to be able to enjoy the same things in their life, to figure out who you really are, what you really value, what you want your life to look like, how to create a vision for that life, and then create a blueprint for an ageless life and business for yourself. And because I was on purpose and living my passion, it made me really happy because I was doing what I was supposed to be doing with my life. So that was what brought me into balance. And it's a very individual balance that you have. So the other thing I learned was, isn't it interesting how my life completely shifted every decade? And in, well, I think actually a week from tomorrow, I'm turning 62. So I'm thinking, okay, my mid-60s are approaching. Does that mean I'm going to have another major change in my life like I did in my 20s and my mid-30s and my mid-40s and my mid-50s? It's like, what the hell? So I will be open and looking forward to whatever changes are coming next. But I hope this gives you a little, maybe an aha moment of going back and getting some different perspective on how you've created your life, where your work-life balance has gone from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s to your 50s and beyond if you're older than that. And to not beat yourself up for not living someone else's version of what they say work-life balance should be. You can take a look at the article that I wrote at agelesslifestyle.com/WLBAL for work-life balance, WLBAL. And I'd love to hear what you think, either blog comment or here on Facebook or YouTube, wherever it is that you're seeing this. I appreciate you watching, and I will be back again with you soon. This is Lynn Pierce from agelesslifestyleafter50.com saying goodbye for now. Be ageless.